Hello, I'm Holly and welcome to a new reading vlog. I want to do more vlogging and I have the perfect excuse because it is the start of the Magical Readathon Autumn Equinox. Magical Readathon is a readathon created by G from Book Roast. I've been taking part in Magical Readathon for years because as a collective everyone read more books in April than they did the April before. You are allowed to start 3 days early and the first day, the 29th, is actually a Saturday. So I was feeling like Saturday and Sunday I want to read a lot. I almost want to do like a mini readathon for myself. I know that there is usually like a 24-hour readathon at some point in the month and I will probably be taking part in that as well. But the fun thing that I want to do over this weekend is I wanted to spin the wheel to randomly select what books I'm going to read in what order. So I've seen a few people select their books in this way. I particularly think of like Cody, who does her wheel of TBR. I've seen Jade from Jade Ray Reads do this. I've seen Gavin do this when he did his 30 manga in 30 days video, and I just think it's really fun because I'm excited to read all these books, but I don't really know where I want to start, so I'm gonna spin a wheel to randomly select. So I've got it on my phone, I've set it all up, and we're gonna spin it to see what my first book is gonna be. Okay, Love in Colour. Let me go and get that. This is a really interesting one to start with. So this is Love in Colour by Bolu Babalola, and this one I think is like a collection of short stories maybe. I remember picking this book up a few years ago. I love the cover and it sounded really interesting to me because it mentioned like mythology and stuff. So it feels like it's a lot of different tales of romance, and I think that it's tales from around the world. It actually says here, mythical tales from around the world retold. So it's retellings of myths and stuff from around the world. And I just think I could really love this. I've really been into romance and love stories at the moment. I don't know what to expect. I haven't really heard too many reviews of this, but I'm excited to give it a go. Hello, so it is now 2:15 on Saturday the 29th of July and I had every intention of starting reading at midnight. I set an alarm, I had a little bit of a nap beforehand, and then my alarm woke me up at midnight and I was just like, no, I don't want to, I prefer sleep. So instead I have decided to do something that I saw India from What India read instead, which is where you do a 24-hour readathon but you split it into 2 days so you don't count the time when you're sleeping. I'm about 4.5 hours in, I've got my timer. You probably can't see it, but I've got my timer going and I do already have some reading updates for you. I am about halfway through Love in Colour by Bolu Babalola. This is a short story collection, so I have read the first 7 stories and I love this book. I am in love with this book. I've really enjoyed a lot of the short story collections that I've read in the past, especially ones that are written by one singular author, and this one, it is just so good. Each of the stories in here is a retelling of a myth, but you don't really have to know those original myths because a lot of them are brought into the modern day. They're just using some of the basic plot lines from them. So for example, there's one in here about Psyche and Eros from Greek mythology, and in that one they're working at this fashion magazine called Olympus, and I love that one. I think that one is one of my favourites, and then I also really love the one that I just read, which was Nefertiti, I think, which was about Nefertiti, who was the head of this criminal underworld who hurt awful men, and then she starts to have feelings for an undercover policewoman, and I just love this. The writing, absolutely gorgeous. The characters, impeccable. Even though these stories are about 20 pages each, I'm getting so invested and involved in these characters. They're so well developed in such a short amount of time. I have cried multiple times. The author is able to create such an atmosphere. All the stories are quite different from each other. Some of them are set more historically, some are set in places where there's fantasy elements, some are set in the modern day. way. It's funny, it's touching, it's romantic. The romance in some of these stories, some of the lines, incredible, incredible. And I know that this author does have a full-length romance book. I think, is it Honey and Spice? I will definitely be picking that one up after this because I can already tell that this is going to be either a 5-star read or a very high 4. At the moment it's looking like it's going to be a 5-star for a short story collection. I am just having the absolute best time, and I am a bit of a slow reader, so it has taken me 4 hours to read 150 pages, but I just love taking my time with these stories and just spending time in these worlds with these characters with this beautiful use of language. The first story in particular, the language, amazing, amazing. It's poetic, it's descriptive, there's loads of imagery, and just the way that these people talk to each other, the dialogue. I love it. If you couldn't tell, I love this book, and my goal for the next few hours is to finish this one, and then I will be doing another spin to see what my next book is. I am thinking that I'm going to go out a little bit later to have a look at some reading chairs, so I might stop the timer there, have an hour, and then start the timer again. But that's it for my update. I'm having an absolutely fantastic time. I don't know how many books I'm going to read over this weekend. As I said, I'm not the fastest reader, but already, if this is a 5-star, or even if it's a 4-star or a 4.5, it's still a winner in my head, and that will be an amazing way to start the magical readathon. So I'm gonna go and read some more of this amazing book. It is now much later in the day. It is actually, let me check, 9:15, and I did go out and have a look at some chairs, but it ended up taking me a lot longer. I took a much bigger pause than I wanted to. So that is the current timer. I have 16 hours and 41 minutes left. And I have finished my first book, which was Love in Colour, and I love this one. I continued to really enjoy this one. Some of the stories were 4 stars. I found that some of them kind of just felt like typical contemporary stories to me, rather than the magic, the amazing writing in the ones in the first half that I talked about, but I still enjoyed them. I think it was still incredible how the author was able to make me care about these characters, care about these relationships, even though you're really not getting much page time with each of these couples. Overall, because I did give some of the stories 4 stars, it ended up coming out as an average of a 4.5, which I still think is fantastic for a short story collection. I think it is very hard to have 5-star stories every single time, but so many of these were 5 stars. So many of them just hit me right in the heart. I had the butterflies, I had all of the emotions, which is what you want when you're reading about romance. It was romantic, and I loved that it talked about different types of romantic love. So there was tender moments, there was passionate moments. I loved how the author could go between all these different time periods and cultures, and showed such a variety in love. Even though all these stories are about couples, they're about romance, none of them felt the same. They were all unique. They all looked at love through a different lens. All of them centered women and agency and their power. I loved how the author interwove or twisted myths and history. I just loved so much about this. I would highly recommend this one. I've had this on my shelves for a few years, I think since like June or July 2021, and this one was for my conjuration prompt. I think it was The Q, maybe The Q in Conjuration, which was to read a book set in a different country or culture to you. I loved it. Great first book to start off the magical readathon, but that does mean that I can now pick my second book. Okay, interesting. Sanctuary. Here we have it. This one's quite a shiny one. I'm sorry about the light, but this one is by Andy C. Buchanan, and this one is a self-published book. And in this one, you are set in this sanctuary for ghosts. I got recommended this one in my comments. I've been interested. I've been wanting to pick it up since I heard about it. It sounded like exactly my cup of tea. So it is now 3:30 on Sunday, and I will admit that I have been pausing the timer a couple of times. I went out this morning to do more chair shopping, so I have about 12 hours and 45 minutes left, which means I haven't even got halfway through yet, but I think that I am going to extend this into tomorrow as well, because I haven't got anything that I need to do tomorrow, so I could extend it another day and like get those last 12 hours in. So I'm not too worried, and I do actually have a reading update for you. So I am now halfway through Sanctuary by Andy C. Buchanan, and so far I am really enjoying this one. So I thought that I would just read you a little bit of the bit on the back, because I feel like it kind of tells you the kind of vibe, the characters, all of that. Morgan's home is a sanctuary for ghosts. The once grand, now dilapidated old house they live in has become a refuge for their found family. Morgan's partner Araminta, an artist with excellent dress sense, Theo, a 10-year-old with an excess of energy, quiet telekinesthetic pensioner Denny, as well as the ghosts who live alongside them, all people who once needed sanctuary for their queer, neurodivergent selves. Now they offer that safety to the dead as well as the living. So essentially you are following this group of characters who live in this big old house, very dilapidated, and they have all come here because they aren't really accepted, I guess, in society, or their families haven't accepted them. A lot of them are autistic, and I love that representation. As someone who is autistic, I could see a lot of elements of myself in these characters, but I also loved that we have such different representations. The autism isn't just portrayed as this monolith, that there are loads of different experiences. A lot of people experience things in different ways, and I really love that. And this one, as it mentions, is also very queer. There are trans characters, non-binary characters, and there is also other representation in this, anxiety, chronic illness. It just has all the representation that you could ever want. But apart from that, the story itself I am really enjoying. So you have all these ghosts, and at the beginning of the book this man turns up on their doorstep with this crate of glass bottles that contain ghosts, and they've opened a few of them and stuff is going on. Some strange things are going on because of opening one of the bottles. But this one is also just really cozy. I love the found family in this. I love all the ghostly elements, even though most of the ghosts in this aren't a threat. They just live pretty happily with the human occupants. There are some ghosts that are maybe a little bit more threatening, and as we're going through the book there are some more intense moments. But overall I'm just finding this really cozy. I love the found family. I love all the neurodivergent queer characters just being themselves and being accepted by other people. I'm really enjoying this one so far. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star. It's not giving me the 5-star feels, but I am still really enjoying it. And this one is for the conjuration prompt, the D in conjuration, which is to read an independently or self-published book. There is one plot point in this that it has decreased the logic a little bit for me, because I don't understand why certain characters are continuing to do something when they know that there are harmful effects. But I can't really say too much more than that because it would be a huge spoiler. But that's the only issue I have at the moment with this book. I'm just having a great time, and I have high hopes that I can finish this one. It isn't taking me too long, it isn't that long of a book, and there are some moments set in the past, so there is a little bit here from 1707. Most of it is set in contemporary times, but those little snippets every now and again of the past are just really intriguing to me. So I'm having a great time, and already I would recommend it. I don't know what the ending is going to be like, but but I have a feeling that it will continue to be a really enjoyable read for me. The sun is very quickly going down, so I'm sorry if the lighting in the back of this isn't very good, but I've just finished Sanctuary by Andy C. Buchanan and I have thoughts, and they aren't the thoughts that I wanted to be bringing to you. In the last clip, I was halfway through the book. I was really enjoying it. I thought it was going to be a 4-star read, and then the second half, what happened in the second half? It just fell apart for me. I liked a lot in this book. I need to start with that. This isn't a bad book. I like the characters. I loved the found family elements. I loved this house of ghosts. I think the plot was interesting, but the thing that completely ruined this book for me was the lack of logic. So something was going on at about the midpoint where these characters were doing something with this item that you as the reader, you knew was a bad item, that they should get rid of it. And one of the characters even went to them and said, you know, you should probably not interact with that item, and they continued to do it, and then something bad happened. And I was ready to dismiss that at that point, but already that went on for a very long time, and then we came to the last big battle against the big bad, and I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand the actions of the characters, and I know what you could say. You could say that these characters are neurodivergent and they might not think in the typical way, so it might be a bit different than like a standard plot thought pattern in other books that I've read, but the thing that they did in the end of the book that fixed everything was something that they could have done right at the beginning. They were already going in with the intention of doing that thing, but they did a massive thing before that that completely didn't make sense to me at all. Characters were getting injured for no reason, in my opinion, and I wish that I could tell you more of the specifics. I have already ranted for about half an hour to my mum because I just didn't understand it. I don't understand. I don't understand what happened at the end of this book. I don't know why certain people made certain decisions, especially decisions that had such big ramifications or could have had such disastrous ramifications. They just kind of went with things and hoped for the best. And I feel like I'm attacking this book. I'm sorry for attacking this book because, as I said, there was a lot in this that I loved, and I really think books like this that are centering autistic characters, that are centering queer characters, they need to be recommended, especially books that are independently or self-published. So if you do like the idea of this sanctuary for ghosts, you love the idea of this found family of queer autistic people coming together and creating their own family, you might enjoy it more than me. Those bits at the end, maybe they wouldn't annoy you. Maybe for some reason they just got on my nerves specifically, and other people maybe wouldn't even notice these things and still be able to really enjoy this book. Also, I do think I mentioned that this book was cozy, and yes, there are cozy elements to this, but I wouldn't completely consider it a cozy fantasy because the stakes are pretty high. There are some really, really intense moments in this. It ended up being a 3-star overall. Like I said, I love the first half, gave that about a 4. Second half was pretty much a 2 for me. That equaled out at about a 3-star. So not a bad book. It was just a bit of a shame for me considering how much I enjoyed that first half. But that does mean that it is a very exciting time because it is time to pick my next read. And I have paused the timer for the moment, so I will just tell you I'm currently on 9 hours left. I have paused it. I will start it again when I start reading. Okay, let's get my... So there we have it. There's the last spin. Okay, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Let me go and get that. So here we have it, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And this one is actually one of the thicker books on my TBR, but I do think there is mixed media in this. So for example, there's a production log. There's a map there, very exciting, and I have heard great things about this. This is a young adult thriller following this girl who is writing this report on this case in the past. I think this girl was killed, everyone thought that it was her boyfriend, and Pip, the main character, is trying to find out the truth. It is now Monday morning, and last night I did start A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I got to page 96, so I read about 100 pages, and so far so good. I'm not hooked yet. I feel like it might take a little while to just get completely sucked in by this story. As I mentioned, this one is written in a mixed media format, so there are interviews, there are project logs, there are maps, as well as just standard prose, and I really like that approach because the standard prose parts are written in third person, I think, and then obviously the project logs are written from the main character Pip's perspective, and I really like that we're seeing Pip from an outside perspective but also seeing her inside thoughts. That is all I've got to so far, and this one is quite chunky. I am just about to film my Magical Readathon TBR, and then as soon as I have filmed that video, I'm just going to spend the rest of today reading. So I've got my phone here. I did obviously use some of the timer last night, but I currently have finally about 7.5 hours left. So I'm going to try and read for 7.5 hours today. Hopefully I can at least finish this one. So it has now been a few hours. It is 11:30 and I am about halfway through. I think I'm a little bit over halfway through, and I'm really enjoying this. I just read a section that was so intense and the phone went off in my house and I jumped out of my skin. And I think I've got like 5 hours left, and I feel like I could finish that in 5 hours. It doesn't seem too much. It's about 200 pages. I will say that Pip, the main character, she isn't the most ethical investigator. She's doing things that are quite illegal, but this is a book and I can kind of just ignore the fact that she's breaking all of these rules and all of these laws because it is really entertaining, and I love seeing how the mystery is slowly unfolding, and I'm really interested to see what the big reveal is at the end, and I'm really intrigued to see how that will pan out, because there are a couple of characters that I'm suspicious of that the main character has maybe dismissed, and I'm wondering whether those characters are going to come back into play or whether they were completely red herrings. Overall then, I am really enjoying it so far. I do think it is maybe going to come out as a 4 unless that ending is just incredible and it blows my mind, because it's not giving me the 5-star feels, and hopefully it doesn't go downhill like Sanctuary. Hopefully that ending is satisfying and is shocking. I am back in my favourite filming location for vlogs, and that is because I have finished A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and I really enjoyed this one. I continued to really enjoy the second half of this. I found it very action-packed, thrilling. There are a couple of moments that had me on the edge of my seat. They were very tense. And I loved trying to figure out this case with Pip. I really like Pip as a main character. I loved her drive for justice. She was just a very captivating character, and I feel like one of those characters who will stick with me for a long time. I think she was very well developed. She had flaws, she had good points. I loved all her interactions with her friends and her family, and this book just really had it all. There were thrilling moments. Obviously it is a thriller, so there were some heart-racing moments, but there were also some really emotional and tear-jerking moments, and then there were also some really funny, light-hearted moments with her family and her friends, and I just had a really great time reading this one. But one of the big reveals at the end of this book I had guessed pretty early on, and I know that this one is young adult, so maybe it is meant to be a little bit more easy to solve, but I don't read many thrillers at all. I probably read maybe 10 at most, probably not even that, maybe 5 thrillers a year, so I'm not very well versed in thrillers and twists and reveals and all of that, but unfortunately I did kind of guess one of the things in this book pretty much before the 50% mark, which I feel is quite early on in the book to be predicting some things. But I did like how Holly Jackson kept you guessing as the reader, but because the ending wasn't completely shocking for me, I am going to give this one a 4 stars rather than a 5. I think for a thriller to get a 5-star, it has to like completely shock me. My jaw has to be on the floor. The foundations of my world have to be shaken, and maybe that's a hard like thing to expect thrillers to do, but I feel like that's what I'm going into a thriller for, and the fact that I predicted large elements of this story story isn't the best. And that's another book ticked off of my Magical Readathon TBR. I'm doing fantastic. This one I think was my O in Demonology, which was to randomly pick a book from Instagram or Goodreads. Now, if I have a look at my timer, I don't have too much time left. I've got 1 hour 41 minutes left. And that isn't enough time to read a whole nother novel, but it might be enough time for me to read one of the graphic novels that's on my TBR, so I won't be doing another spin on the wheel, but I think that I'm just going to go and pick up Money Shot Volume 2. I'm reading this one for the O in Spells and Incantations, which is to simply read a manga, comic, graphic novel, something like that, and this one is about intergalactic porn stars, and it's a lot of fun, and it will probably take me maybe an hour, maybe the hour and 41 minutes. Yeah. It is official, I have finished my 24-hour readathon, and I did actually manage to finish Money Shot Volume 2 by Tim Seeley and Sarah Beattie. This one is a sci-fi graphic novel series following intergalactic porn stars, and there is more to this series. It isn't just sex, so for example in this one there was like alien species warring, and I still found this one very fun. It was very funny, I liked the characters, I liked all their relationships with each other, and I did like the plot, but I do think the novelty of the first one had worn off a little bit for this one because I didn't find myself enjoying it as much as the first one. I still ended up rating this one a 3-star though, so I did still enjoy it, and I will be reading the third one at some point this month. But that is it then for the books that I have read for this vlog. I'm really happy that I've got through 4 books from my Magical Readathon TBR, considering it isn't even the 1st of August yet, so I thought that I would just very quickly run through them. The first book I finished was Love in Colour by Bolu Babalola. This was for my Q in Conjuration, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. Then I read Sanctuary by Andy C. Buchanan for the D in Conjuration, and I gave this one 3 stars. For the O in Demonology, I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and I gave this one 4 stars. And then finally for the O in Spells and Incantations, I read Money Shot Volume 2, which I gave 3 stars. So I've just added it up, and I've read 1,152 pages, which I'm really happy about. I don't think I've read that much in one weekend for a while, so I'm really happy with that. I'm really happy with my progress with my Magical Readathon TBR. I've had a great time, I had some great books. Even though some of them let me down a little bit, I did still enjoy reading them. I still had a good time. There was no book that I hated over this weekend. Let me know what you think of any of the books that I've read over this weekend, but that is it for today's video. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and to everyone out there, stay curious. Bye!